every game. Every game. He talks about every game.
Daniel Edward Antonucci was born on February 27, 1957 in Toronto, Canada. His parents were Italian immigrants who always spoke rancid cusses in Danny's words. Both aspects of his life would go on to influence his work. Danny wanted to work in animation, making adult cartoons. He didn't like the presumption that animation was just for kids and wanted to portray adult themes. While adult animation is commonplace these days, keep in mind this was the early 80s, long before adult animation had become mainstream, and the pieces of adult animation that did exist, such as Fritz the Cat, didn't impress Danny, who felt it didn't go far enough. Danny attended the Sheridan College of Visual Arts, but later quit to accept a job as an animator at a division of Hanna-Barbera, Can Image Production, in either 1980 or 1981. I couldn't determine which year exactly. While there, he worked on shows such as The Flintstone Comedy Show and The Smurfs. It's safe to say that Danny would have preferred to be working on more adult shows, but he was probably happy just to be working in animation. Although he did get to work on the film Heavy Metal around this time, which would have been more up his alley. In 1984, Danny intended to move to LA in search of more work, but instead found himself still in Canada, but now in Vancouver, having landed a job at International Rocket Ship Limited to animate television commercials and short films. It's here where Danny got the chance to direct his first animated short film, Lupo the Butcher, which released in 1987. The film was very much for adults, with Danny saying he used the creation of the film to get out a lot of his pent-up frustration for having to work in children's animation for so long. And that frustration led to a film that's very over the top. Well, over the top by 1987 standards anyway. It's nothing too shocking to watch these days. It's just a butcher who swears a lot, accidentally cuts off his thumb, and then for no reason all his other limbs begin to fall off on their own with excessive blood pouring out. And he continues to swear over the credits despite being just a head. Danny says the butcher character was a combination of his father and uncle, as you can tell with his Italian accent, even muttering to himself in Italian at the beginning. The film was not a mainstream success, but it gained notoriety in the animation world and was screened at film festivals. In 1993, while still working at International Rocket Ship, Danny would work on animated TV ads for MTV, which MTV loved so much they approached Danny with the prospect of making an adult animated TV show for the network. Danny left International Rocket Ship to form his own animation studio, aka Cartoon, on April 1st, 1994. It was primarily formed in order to work on MTV's proposal of a show, which would become The Brothers Grunt, a short-lived show that's apparently considered by some to be one of the worst animated TV shows of all time. Yikes. Hey, these title cards seem kind of familiar. So does the show's use of random sound effects. And, yeah, this isn't great. The show only has two goals, to confuse you and to gross you out. It's a lot of indiscernible imagery and nonsensical dialogue, with intentionally gross characters and moments. And since this is MTV, back when they still cared about being seen as a music channel, there are moments where a random music video plays while the characters are nonsensically animated over top. I don't think it's close to being the worst animated show of all time though. I actually admire just how unconcerned it is with appealing to the audience. It's unapologetically gross and unintelligible, while also putting in effort to be as gross and unintelligible as possible. This show is a piece of art, in the sense that pondering the implications of its creation is a more enriching experience than actually watching it. It's an artistic statement more than it is a TV show. I don't recommend it. aka Cartoon would get another chance at MTV with a new show called Cartoon Sushi, which was a compilation show featuring animated shorts from all sorts of studios, with the opening being animated by aka Cartoon, along with them contributing some shorts to the show. After this, aka Cartoon would never end up working with MTV again, perhaps due to events that transpired in 1996, a year before Cartoon Sushi premiered. Danny got a call from another TV station that wanted him to pitch a show. It was Nickelodeon. Danny outright refused. He didn't want to work on more children's shows. He was at the helm of his own studio now, and his studio only did adult animation, so he refused. And they called again, and he refused. And they called again, and he refused. Eventually Danny got fed up with the calls, so he decided to come up with a quick character sheet and premise for a kids show. Nickelodeon loved it, and surprised by their enthusiasm, Danny decided to share his premise with a good friend of his, Linda Saminsky, who at the time worked at Cartoon Network. She said that she wanted to see more and don't give this to anybody else. The show was Ed, Edd, and Eddy, and it was about to become one of Cartoon Network's most popular and beloved shows. Before we continue, I just have to ask, why was Nickelodeon so enthusiastic about getting aka Cartoon to make a kids show for them? The only show to their name was a gross adult show that was universally panned by audiences and critics. Obviously they were right in the end about the studio's potential, but for their efforts they lost the show to Cartoon Network, apparently due to Nickelodeon wanting creative control of the show, but I wonder if Danny being friends with Linda Saminsky also played a role in that. Ed, Edd and Eddy would air its first episode on January 4th, 1999, and would conclude with a made-for-TV movie called Ed, Edd and Eddy's Big Picture Show in 2009. The show spanned 5 seasons of 69 episodes and 130 segments, plus the movie. Well, technically it's 6 seasons, but season 6 has literally only 1 episode, because production of the season was cancelled in favour of working on the movie instead, and the future DVDs would include the singular season 6 episode as part of season 5. AKA Cartoon finally had a hit on their hands. I just want to add how obvious it is that they originally had no intention of working on a kids show, by just looking at their studio logo. This is shown at the end of every episode of Ed, Edd and Eddy, and it's a guy being impaled by a pencil. Honestly, this image is so noisy and chaotic that I had no idea what I was looking at as a kid, but it still surprises me that Cartoon Network didn't make the studio change their logo, or omit it from the episodes. Anyway, Ed, Edd and Eddy, what a great show. All about 3 boys with the same name trying to get money for Jawbreakers and having adventures in their neighborhood. I think Danny not liking children's animation is why it felt so fresh and unique. Most people working in that area by choice are often influenced by other kid-friendly animation that inspired them. But Danny didn't have that. All he had was his own childhood experiences growing up in the 60s, and that's where a lot of Ed, Edd and Eddy comes from. Although the show never mentions what year it is, it's obviously harking back to the era that Danny grew up in. Eddy owns a record player and is very protective over his records. He has a disco ball in his room and in one episode mentions wanting to show off his new disco moves. The kids never mention playing on game consoles or computers and spend almost all their time outside, although Ed does enjoy his monster movies on TV. Lots of characters in the show are based on someone Danny knew growing up, like Rolf is once again inspired by his Italian family, mainly his cousins. Johnny and his imaginary friend Plank are based on a kid Danny knew whose imaginary friend was a blanket, and the Kanker sisters were based on some girls who would pick on Danny and dare him to kiss them, just like they did to the Eds on the show. A lot of aspects of the show's animation and its slapstick comedy are based on the animated shows Danny watched growing up, like Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes. Despite the over-the-top aspects, the show ends up feeling surprisingly grounded, following events that could happen to any kid, and any cartoon craziness could just be attributed to a child's overactive imagination. Which is the focus of some episodes, like when the Eds imagine themselves fighting off aliens on a distant planet, when they're actually just in the local junkyard. The show was funny and charming. It kinda makes you feel like a kid again, when all you wanted was some money to buy candy, and every day was an adventure, despite it actually being quite mundane. Oh wait, I'm supposed to be talking about video games. Man, this is a bad gaming channel. Yes, there were video games. Makes sense. No popular cartoon of the time could avoid being turned into a video game, especially Flash games. Going on CartoonNetwork.com as a kid was one of my favourite pastimes, so I know a lot of these Ed, Edd and Eddy browser games pretty well. Flash is no longer supported these days, but luckily there's Blue Maxima's Flashpoint, which not only archives thousands of Flash games and animations, along with other discontinued platforms, but also allows you to easily play them. So, let's start with every Ed, Edd and Eddy Flash game. Keep in mind throughout this entire video I'm only going to cover games that are purely Ed, Edd and Eddy titles. There are some Flash games and physical games that feature many Cartoon Network characters, including Ed, Edd and Eddy, but I won't be covering those. Pure Ed, Edd and Eddy titles only. First up, Ed, Edd and Eddy Create Your Own E-Card. Guess what you do in this one? If you guessed bathing in the blood of the innocent, what's wrong with you? You make E-cards. Here's mine. It depicts Ed accidentally creating an exponential duplication event in which the amount of Eds constantly doubles until eventually he will cover the entire surface of the world. This will result in the death of all life on Earth. Don't worry though, this will be limited to only our own planet so the universe will be fine, and post. Up next, Ed, Edd and Eddy Go-Kart Rally. Eddy, are you feeling alright? Should I call an ambulance? This game has the most confusing character and kart selection menu I've ever seen. Like, this is a game all on its own. So this one is... it's really terrible. This is a pitiful showing. Like, I don't need to say anything, it speaks for itself. Next game. Ed, Edd and Eddy Jawbreaker Mine. Help Ed, Edd and Eddy get to the ancient Jawbreakers by obtaining the mining tools. What the hell are ancient Jawbreakers? Also, they spelled Jawbreakers as 2 words here, but correctly have it as 1 word in the title. And again, Eddy, are you okay? Why is your skin like that? Get the flashlight. Oh god, look at the jumping. He just gets teleported forward and in the air and then falls completely vertically to the ground. That's not a jump, guys. And look how terrible Ed looks when he's climbing a ladder. Like, that is just a collection of shapes that vaguely resemble Ed's backside. Yeah, this is absolutely terrible. There's no excuse for this. I've played Tiger LCD games that were better than this. Next game. Ed, Edd and Eddy Sewer Rat Balloon Bash. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Sewer Rat Balloon Bash. Jeez, what is it with Ed and Eddy Flash games and their spelling mistakes? Okay, we gotta grab bottles from the sewer to trade in for cash for Jawbreakers. In this kids game, you can drown a child in sewer water. Also, Ed sounds just like he does in the show. Ow! Ha! Classic Ed. So you gotta keep an eye on double D strength because it will constantly go down while you're not up on the surface, and if it reaches 0 then you lose a life. You also gotta keep an eye on these rats, which is hard because their movement is pretty random and quick. They also spawn on random sides every time you play, sometimes doubling up on the left and right. In my opinion, this is the most optimal because it leaves a safe spot where you can chill under the sewer where no rats can get to you from the left or right, making things a lot easier. So for the first level you should keep resetting until you get rat spawns that double up and leave a safe spot. But you also notice that it's impossible to stop moving, so to stay in one spot you need to keep moving back and forth, which adds a lot of challenge, especially when you don't have a safe spot. Add that with the quick and random movement of the rats, plus the fact that the bottles aren't always available to grab, as they too are random with how many are floating by. Remember that strength stat again, it's easy to forget when keeping in mind everything else. You gotta let it recharge. Gotta watch the rats. Gotta watch out for the bottles, make sure there's one there when I get to it. Can't stop moving, gotta concentrate going back and forth. Gotta remember to recharge my strength. Is there anything I'm forgetting? Let's go through it again. Rats, moving, strength, bottles. Is that everything? Gotta concentrate. Rats, moving, strength, bottles. Rats, moving, strength, bottles. Rats, moving, strength, bottles. So, God. I've lived with an anxiety disorder my entire life, and I've thought of a way to kind of think about it. It's like if you imagine, you know those when planes like crash, they've got those like warning signals that let you know that like you're flying too low or that there's terrain in front of you, and it just goes whoop whoop terrain, pull up, whoop whoop. It's like anxiety is like that's going off all the time, but I'm fine, like nothing's going wrong. I'm flying the plane, everything's good, weather's clear, everything's fine, but the alarms just keep going off like whoop whoop terrain, pull up, and it's like, you know, you try and drown it out and you try and tell yourself there's nothing wrong and everything's fine, and you know, good luck calming yourself down when that's blaring in your ear. And it's like, oh my god, you almost wish the plane was actually crashing, so at least then the warnings would be accurate, you know. Next up is the balloon portion of the game. You gotta hit Marie with water balloons. Is that a scream or a car screeching? Also, Eddy broke both his arms off screen. This game is okay, I guess. On to the next. Ed, Edd and Eddy, Nightmare in Space. We get a short animated intro for this one. Double D gets hit in the head so hard he's instantly knocked unconscious and begins to dream of Eddy in space. I can only assume he's being rushed to the hospital while we play the game. It's a shoot 'em up, though it's a bad one. I've never played a shoot 'em up where even the most basic enemies can't be killed by your basic attacks, and require using limited items to dispose of them. And I mean, look at this, everything moves so slow and yet it's still hard because of enemies you can't kill and how large your hitbox is. Another one for the trash. Next game. Cartoon Network Coloring, Ed, Edd and Eddy. You get one picture to color in and only 10 colors to choose from, but one of those colors is white, so that doesn't even count. I made everything red. Ed, Edd and Eddy, Gob, Gob and Gobby. Okay, so Gobby is a piece of Australian slang that means, well, licking a lollipop if you catch what I mean, if you're picking up, you know, what I mean, if you see where I'm going. Another intro. This one doesn't look great, and for some reason has a 5-second snippet of the theme song slowed down and playing on repeat. Very grating. In this one, you catch Jawbreakers with your tongue burrow. Also, Mario makes a guest appearance.
Yum!
Not much else to say about this one. It's okay, I guess. Ed, Edd and Eddy, Candy Factory. You gotta shoot the coloured balls into holes of the same colour. It's just that. This game is mind-numbing and barely a game at all. Let's move on. Ed, Edd and Eddy, Infect Ed, the Tainted Jawbreaker. It's another platformer. This time it takes place entirely inside Ed's stomach as you control a white blood cell. Would you even know this was an Ed, Edd and Eddy game just by looking at it? And yeah, it's another bad and basic platformer. You have this melee attack that has super short range, requiring you to be pixels away from taking damage to be able to hit the enemy. It's a little bit better than that other platformer, but not by much. It doesn't even feel like an Ed, Edd and Eddy game. Next, build the faces of Ed, Edd and Eddy. The goal of this game is to correctly rebuild the Ed's faces, but it's way more fun to just make wacky faces instead. Otherwise, it's just another mostly worthless game. Next. Ed, Edd and Eddy Cart Attack. This game is absolutely impossible. You can barely see 2 feet in front of you, the cart goes pretty quick and you turn super slowly. Even if you have godlike reaction time, there will still be moments where you have to take damage, because you just turn too slowly to be able to avoid all the obstacles. Another completely worthless game. Damn, I remember mostly having fun playing these Flash games as a kid. I didn't know just how many of them were complete garbage. Well, let's see if we can find any gems. Ed, Edd and Eddy, Ed Over Heels. It's one of those balancing games. You have to alternate between pressing left and right and correct yourself when you start to fall. It's alright honestly, but the final level with Ed is impossible. I swear as soon as he starts to fall in a certain direction I hold down the arrow key to correct it, and sometimes I still fall. I have no idea how to beat it. Ed, Edd n Eddy, dunk and dine. In this one you gotta swim, collect food and avoid obstacles and enemies. It's whatever, not much to say on this one. Very basic but inoffensive I guess. Clash of the Idiots. Here we go. This was my favourite Ed, Edd n Eddy Flash game as a kid, so let's see if it holds up. It's based on an episode of the show where Double D becomes a wrestler. In the episode he's supposed to go up against Plank since it would be an easy fight, but still ends up losing, and then the Kanker sisters show up and you can guess how well that went for our main characters. But here we get to attempt a different outcome. In this game you select 5 wrestling moves that Double D will attempt during the match, and what order he will attempt them in. Then when the match starts, the game basically does an invisible coin flip 5 times, to see if Double D is the one to perform a move, or if Lee Kanker will get to perform one of her moves. If both wrestlers still have health by the end, then it's time to go again, and their health status will remain unchanged next round. If you manage to win, then you unlock some new moves to try for the next match, until eventually you beat the entire game. So the aim of the game is to essentially try to plan ahead, and account for the fact that you're going to lose out on some coin flips. This strategy is mostly embodied in a single move, that being Rejuvenate, which will heal some health. But it's just like any other wrestling move, in that if you have it, say, as your first move to perform, and then you lose the first coin flip, then you won't be gaining any health that round because you miss out on performing any moves that you fail the coin flip on. So the best strategy is to give your heals a decent chance of going through by repeating Rejuvenate multiple times around, increasing the odds that one or more of them will go through. So I recommend starting your round by doing 2 or 3 of your strongest attacks, and then doing 2 or 3 Rejuvenates at the end. There's one more thing to consider, and that's super moves. If either you or the Kankers win 3 coin flips in a row, then they will perform an extra super move which does a decent amount of damage. I'm not a fan of this because whoever wins 3 flips in a row is already in a really good position, so piling on the damage can be a bit unfair. And that ties into my main complaint with the game, the randomness. There were a couple of times where I lost all 5 coin flips in a single round, which is devastating when combined with super moves, along with times when I lost most of my coin flips several rounds in a row and kept falling behind. However, the randomness is the entire core of the gameplay, so I'm not suggesting the game should have removed the randomness altogether. Rather, I would have liked it if every move had its own probability of going through. As it stands, there's no reason to use any wrestling moves outside of the one you currently have that does the most damage, and Rejuvenate. But if the weaker moves had a higher probability, then that would give those moves more purpose. Plus it would allow for even more strategy in regards to balancing probability versus effectiveness. All things considered though, this is still far and away the best Ed, Edd n Eddy Flash game we've seen so far. I highly doubt we'll find anything that tops this. What's your Ed's name? This is the most worthless Flash game I've ever played. It's supposed to tell you which Ed you are based on your name, but it's completely random. You can keep putting in the same name and get a different result each time. I mean, of course it was going to be random, like there was no other way to determine something as arbitrary as your Ed name, but they still could have at least made it so that your name is used as the seed for the RNG so that each name would have the same result every time. This game is a waste of space. Next. Ed, Edd n Eddy Toy Twister. The graphics look good on this one. It's a simple game. You balance on the board, collect toys and avoid hazards. You also get more money if you wait until you're holding the maximum amount of toys before handing them to Ed. This game's alright. Good even. The Ed Touchables. This is a shooting gallery game that you play with your mouse. It also has a Star Wars. Another decent one. Would be more fun if you somehow got a light gun working with it though. Ed, Edd n Eddy Lunchroom Rumble. Now this is an infamous Flash game right here. If you know Ed, Edd n Eddy trivia, then you might already be aware of this game. It's famous for supposedly showing you what's under Double D's hat, a mystery that the show itself never ended up answering. If you Google what's under Double D's hat, then you will see this screenshot from this very Flash game repeated over and over. It seems that Double D is balding, or at least has his hair cut very short. But can we even take this as canon? Did the Flash game developers consult with Danny about what was under Double D's hat so they could portray it in the game? I don't know, I doubt it. I think it's best to treat this with a grain of salt in regards to whether or not it's canon. Anyway, what about the actual game? Well, it's one big food fight. You grab food for ammo and run around collecting health and items. I found the most success by just spending most of my time running around collecting health until most of the other players had finished each other off, and then only getting involved when there's like 1 or 2 other players left in the fight. Just never stop moving and always be collecting health and you should be golden. Each character also has their own stats, and you unlock new characters as you progress. It's a good game, but still not better than Clash of the Idiots in my opinion. Cul-de-sac Smash. This one is pretty good. It's a top-down destruction derby game that's pretty involved with you earning money to purchase cart parts to make better and better carts. Though I don't find the actual derby gameplay to be that compelling. The view is pretty zoomed in, so it's hard to incorporate any kind of strategy outside of driving around like a madman. The game tries to help with this with the character indicators in the map in the bottom right, but it's still not much help with how fast and chaotic everything is. But it's a decent game, and it seems someone else thought so too because it got a sequel, Cul-de-sac Smash 2 Wheels of Fury. This time around each character has their own special ability unique to them, which is a great addition. Hey, it's the old Mundo Stink Bomb, we'll see that again later. Other than that, it's mostly the same game, but that is a big addition that adds extra strategy and replay value. If I liked the actual Derby gameplay a little more, I could see this taking my top spot as the best Eddy Flash game. Instead, I think it will occupy my number 2 spot for now. To the Ed Stream. This is a skateboarding game where you just do tricks with the occasional obstacle getting in your way. It's okay, but it's pretty mindless and probably won't hold your attention for too long. Ed, Edd n Eddy's Candy Machine Deluxe. This is one of those pipe maze kind of games, except usually with those there's time pressure involved with you needing to make the path quickly and with random parts. Here you have as much time as you want and can use as many pieces as you want, with the goal basically being to just be creative and get as many points as you can by using all sorts of crazy pieces. It's a very relaxing take on this sort of game. Of course it's super easy, but it's obviously more about being creative and seeing what you can make. Every time you beat a level you unlock new pieces to use, so it can keep your attention for a little while. I like this one a lot, although I don't think it has much replay value. Once you've seen every piece and had your fun with it, there's little reason to ever play it again. But with Flash games, replay value isn't nearly as important. There's thousands upon thousands of Flash games out there. Even if you found one with some replay value, you likely wouldn't return to it that often anyway. Wait, this game has an entry on the cutting room floor? A leftover from Applejack's Breakfast Machine, which this game is a reskin of. Oh really? Let me see this. Oh wow, it is the exact same game. It has all the same pieces, sound effects, and menus. Although there is one very big difference. There's an actual puzzle element. Each level has these kitchen objects like fridges and tables, which act as obstacles that you have to build around. So it's much more of an actual game here, but I still prefer the Ed, Edd n Eddy version. I find its easygoing nature more interesting and appealing. Ed, Edd n Eddy Spin Stadium. This is another one I remember liking when I was a kid. It's Ed, Edd n Eddy Beyblades. Pretty simple, just send it off and try to hit as many spinning tops as you can at once for a higher score. Although if you send one out and it doesn't end up hitting anything, then you lose energy. Lose it all and it's game over. Simple, but fun enough. Bowl Ed Over. Now I remember this game as a kid. You see, for some reason as a kid I was obsessed with bowling games, so having an Ed, Edd n Eddy bowling game was like they made a game specifically for me. In fact, I loved bowling games so much that even as a kid I instantly recognized that this game was a reskin of the game Gutter Ball, and of course the same devs who made that game also made this, Skunk Studios. I also really loved Gutter Ball as a kid. My favorite feature in that game was the ability to customize the appearance of your bowling ball by using a picture from your computer. Sadly, Bowl Ed Over doesn't have this feature. Also, this Ed, Edd n Eddy game was briefly a piece of lost media. There was no way to play it, but luckily someone eventually found the files and it was archived, and is now available through Flashpoint. That was a weird feeling, to have a game I had strong memories of be a piece of desired lost media. This is also technically a Shockwave game, not a Flash game, but whatever. Anyway, it's bowling, nothing special. Each ball has different starting stats, and by finishing games you can earn skill points to upgrade the ball further. Other than that, you just drag the mouse and flick the ball into the pins. There are 2 different alleys, but the only difference is their appearance and the song that plays. It's a good little bowling game, and I appreciate how far they went with the Ed, Edd n Eddy reskin, even having the actors come in to say some lines for the game and comment on your bowling.
Nice!
Although if you don't care about Ed, Edd n Eddy and just want to play a good bowling game, then Gutter Ball 1 and 2 are definitely better versions of the same thing. They have more content and alleys, including some crazy ones that you wouldn't see in real life. But one thing to note about this game is that it wasn't free, at least not entirely. It was part of the Cartoon Network Power Play game series. Basically it was a series of high-grade Shockwave games available from the Cartoon Network website, and that you had to pay a small fee to play, but they all featured timed free trials. The fact that you had to pay money to play this game kinda requires you to look at it a little more critically than all the other free Flash games we've seen, even though you can play this game for free easily today. Wait, it costs $20? This game is not worth that, it's 2 alleys and that's it, that's $10 an alley. So yeah, at the time I'd say this was pretty underwhelming considering the price. You could probably get your fill from just the free trial, but I still like it. And that's it. Every single official Ed, Edd n Eddy Flash game. At least every one that's available on Flashpoint. There were some stinkers for sure. In fact, I'd say most of them were, but there were also some good ones in there. My top 3 favorite Ed, Edd n Eddy Flash games, starting with the best, would probably be Clash of the Idiots, Cul-de-sac Smash 2, and Candy Machine Deluxe. I'd probably put Bowl Ed Over at number 1 if I thought it counted, but I don't think it does. Now it's time to move over to a different platform, the mobile phone. No, not that mobile phone, that mobile phone. Yep, Ed, Edd n Eddy had a game on old flip phones called Ed, Edd n Eddy Giant Jawbreakers. It was released on March 4th, 2004 and was developed by Macrospace. So let's use a J2ME emulator and check this game out. beautiful music. The copy I tracked down isn't in English, but I think we can figure it out. Wait, this is a ripoff of Bubble Struggle. No wait, that is the new version of a game once called Bubble Trouble. No wait, that was just a ripoff of Buster Brothers, jeez. Anyway, you've probably played this sort of game before. You pop the Jawbreakers, which then turn into 2 smaller Jawbreakers, which then turn into 2 even smaller Jawbreakers, until finally you can collect them. Just don't get hit by the Jawbreakers, along with making sure to pick up power-ups. It's a fine little game, I guess. Could have helped you pass the time on the bus or something, but there isn't much value in this today, which is honestly the case for most flip phone games. Just play Buster Brothers or Bubble Struggle instead. So we're finally done looking at all the internet/flip phone based Ed, Edd n Eddy games. It's time to get serious and move on to the actual, physical Ed, Edd n Eddy games that you could buy at a game store. The first of which was a game called Ed, Edd n Eddy Jawbreakers, released on September 15th, 2002 on the Game Boy Advance, developed by Climax Group and published by BAM Entertainment. Well, let's see if Ed, Edd n Eddy's first proper video game was any good. Okay, so I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is one of the worst video games I have ever played. Like 90% of the free Flash games I covered earlier were miles better than this. Let's start with the positives. The graphics aren't terrible and the Eds have good animations. Granted, they're taken directly from the show, but it still looks good. Alright, now it's time for the bad. So this is a 2D puzzle platformer. You swap between the 3 Eds and have to make use of their unique abilities to traverse the stages. A decent concept, but they literally screw up every single aspect of the game design. First of all, there are color-coded coins that only a certain Ed is able to collect, Donkey Kong 64 style. It sucked in that game and it sucks here. Next, when you aren't controlling an Ed, they just stand in place and won't follow you, so you have to swap to them and manually walk them through the stage one by one. That's incredibly tedious. Next, the controls are awful. Going from walking speed to running speed isn't gradual and is rather jarring. Your movement goes all over the place when jumping, not to mention you're pretty slippery on the ground. It just feels terrible to control. Eddy is the only one who can double jump, which makes him the best to play with. Too bad you need to control all the Eds to the end of the stage. Next, the game is super cryptic and doesn't do anything to help you learn its mechanics. For example, I get to this part with a wheelbarrow and some wet cement that I can't walk over. Eddy can get past thanks to his double jump, but Ed and Double D are stuck here. I literally had to look up a walkthrough to figure this out, and it's so dumb. You need to stand in the exact right spot behind the wheelbarrow as Double D and press up on the D-pad, and he will get inside the wheelbarrow. Then, and only then, Ed will gain the ability to move the wheelbarrow when he walks into it, allowing them both to cross. Let me break down every single way this single puzzle was completely screwed up. First, they could have added a button prompt to appear on screen when Double D is near the wheelbarrow to let you know it's even possible to get inside it, or even make it so Double D gets inside automatically when he touches it. Secondly, they should have made it so Ed could move the wheelbarrow even without Double D inside, to let the player know it's an interactable object and part of a puzzle. And finally, they should have come up with a better puzzle entirely because Ed still has to walk over the wet cement even when he's using the wheelbarrow, so it still doesn't make any sense as a solution to the problem. Why would having Double D in the wheelbarrow suddenly make it okay for Ed to walk on the cement? When he isn't pushing the wheelbarrow, he can't walk on the cement, but all of a sudden he can in this one instance? It doesn't make any sense as a solution to the problem, further decreasing the likelihood that anyone could figure this out along with everything else I mentioned. Oh, and every stage has a time limit too, so if you spend too long trying to figure out the game's cryptic puzzles, then be prepared to start over. This game is terrible. I got stuck again on another cryptic puzzle in the second level, got a game over and gave up. This game is bad. I give it a 0.5 out of 10. This game costs money too. But now it's time for the big one, the only Ed, Edd n Eddy game to be released on a major home console, Ed, Edd n Eddy The Mis-Edventures. Released on October 31st, 2005 for PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, PC, and Game Boy Advance. It was developed by Artificial Mind and Movement, who are now known as Behavior Interactive, and published by Midway. I was 7 years old in 2005, and it was the first year that I can recall getting excited for games that hadn't come out yet. The first game I got excited for that year was Worms 4 Mayhem, which came out first in July/August of 2005. In the case of both games, I would basically just go on their respective websites every day and get excited to one day be able to play them. In the case of the Mis-Edventures, it was going to this Flash site, which is still archived on Flashpoint. Oh, I remember this. You get to put in a secret code which you were supposed to obtain from this magazine ad. Answer all the questions and you get the code that you could put into this website. Of course, as a kid I didn't know where to find this code, and I bet this magazine ad wasn't even in any magazines I could have possibly gotten my hands on as a kid in Australia. But regardless, I decided to try and guess the code. It was only 4 letters, so I thought, maybe it's scam. Eddy is always trying to scam the neighborhood kids for money, so I put it in and bam, I just unlocked a wallpaper I wasn't supposed to have. I actually made this my desktop wallpaper for a while to celebrate. You could also watch a trailer for the game on this site, which sadly isn't available in the archived version on Flashpoint, but believe me, as a kid I watched this trailer over and over and over again. Even now I still have good portions of it memorized. But the main portion of the site was finding all the gags in each of the Ed's rooms by clicking on everything. Sometimes it required some light puzzle solving to get the desired outcome. There were also 9 hidden Jawbreakers to find. If you found all the Jawbreakers, you would be able to download this tip sheet for the game. These tips suck, by the way. They all just explain basic mechanics that you'll learn and use to beat the levels with or without this sheet. The only slight tip is the one which just reminds you to dig in all the sandboxes around the game to access bonus levels. For completing Eddy's room, you could download this sticker sheet. I guess you would need special sticker paper to make use of it. For completing Double D's room, you could download some Ed and Eddy desktop icons. Hey, there's that weird Eddy face again. And for completing Ed's room, you got another wallpaper. I don't like this one as much. So yeah, that was the website, and now you have a glimpse of what it was like for 7-year-old me, eagerly waiting for it to come out. I didn't actually know the exact day it was coming out, so I was kind of just hoping to see it one day in a game shop and ask my dad to buy it. My dad was always the one who took me to game shops. Have you seen the film Hoodwinked? It's a 2005 animated comedy that's very obviously inspired by Shrek, and it's apparently not very good. Anyway, I've never seen it, and it's because of the Mis-Edventures. You see, one day my dad planned for both of us to take a trip to the movies, and we settled on Hoodwinked. So we went out to the theatre, which was inside of a shopping centre, and we had some time to kill before the movie started, so we walked around the shopping centre and ended up inside a game shop. And that's where I saw it, for the first time, Ed, Edd and Eddy the Mis-Edventures for PC, right there on the shelf. Ecstatic, I immediately asked my dad to buy it for me, but he said that he only had enough money on him to pay for our movie tickets, so if he bought me the game, then we would need to go right back home and miss the movie. I thought about it for around 5 seconds, and then said, yeah, I want the game. And so we left, game in hand, and to this day I've still never seen Hoodwinked, which was probably for the best anyway. Luckily I loved the game, so I always felt I made the right choice as a kid, even before I found out the movie wasn't very good. I also never saw the game on the shelf of a game store ever again after that, so retroactively I did see that as my only chance. I do wonder how my dad felt though. I can't imagine he was too excited to see an animated kids movie. I know if I asked him today he wouldn't remember any of this. So as a kid, I played the PC version, which should still be the definitive version, right? I should probably track down another PC copy and... Oh wait, this game came out in 2005 for the PC, oh no. Star Force DRM was rampant in 2005, and any games that have it are a no-go to try to run these days. Star Force acquired kernel-level access to your computer and did all sorts of shady things in the name of stopping piracy. Of course, this just made the pirated versions more valuable even if you owned a legit copy of the game. I know Star Force was rampant in 2005 because the other game I was excited for that year, Worms 4 Mayhem, also had Star Force DRM, and I remember having issues running that game only a year or two after I got it. The reason Star Force games are a no-go is because it's very possible, when using a newer operating system, that Star Force can brick your operating system and require you to reinstall Windows, again due to the kernel level access that it needs. There are many reports of this happening with Ed, Edd and Eddy, and while apparently it's possible to work around it, there's no way I'm exposing myself to the chance of having to deal with the headache of reinstalling Windows from a bricked version, when there exist other alternatives such as the console versions. The PC version came on 2 discs, because it used CD-ROMs instead of DVDs like every other version. As a kid I ended up losing the second disc which you needed to install the game again, but it's kind of lucky that I did because otherwise I might have ended up bricking a computer at some point. Of the 3 console versions, the odd one out is the PS2 version as it's locked to 30 frames per second, versus the GameCube and Xbox versions which both run at 60. There was one thing the PS2 version had over the others though, at least if you lived in America, as some versions came with a bonus behind the scenes DVD. There are interviews with Danny and the voice actors, along with some stuff about the game itself. This DVD is probably the best behind the scenes video for Ed, Edd and Eddy, and it wouldn't exist without this game. Copies of the game which come with this DVD go for a lot more money than a copy without it. I think because fans of the show genuinely want the DVD, that and it is the rarest version. But if all you care about is playing the game, then the GameCube and Xbox versions are the way to go. The game looks and plays far better at 60 FPS. If you're going the emulation route, then GameCube is the best because Xbox emulation still hasn't caught up with Dolphin's level of performance and accuracy. Although there's one quirk of the GameCube version that I noticed when comparing all the different versions. The skybox is wrong on GameCube. It's way darker than every other version of the game. I actually thought this was Dolphin's fault at first, so I reported the issue, only to be told by one of Dolphin's developers, JMC47, that this is how it looks on real hardware, and sure enough I go on YouTube and yeah, it just looks like this on GameCube. Still, I want my 60 FPS, so you'll have to excuse the darker skyboxes in my footage. Just know that they should be brighter and more true to the cartoon than they appear. And so finally, let's take a look at the Ed, Edd and Eddy video game. Only 2 languages, English and French. Oh, this is a Canadian game, isn't it?
Canadians are weird!
I guess it made sense, since the show and its actors are based in Canada, to have a Canadian developer make the game. So this game is a 3D puzzle platformer where you control all 3 Eds and use their unique abilities to solve puzzles. I guess that's a very easy idea to have for an Ed, Edd and Eddy game. Luckily it's handled way better here. Look, the other Eds follow you when you're not controlling them. What a genius idea. The Eds each have different basic attacks. My favourite is Eddy's yo-yo because it has the most range, so you don't need to get as close to the enemies to attack them. Because of this, I usually use Eddy as my default choice until I need to use an ability from one of the other Eds. Wait, the manual says it's a chain wallet, not a yo-yo. Huh, I never would have guessed, the animation is too quick to tell. Let's list all of their abilities. Ed's basic attack is using his head. The manual calls this Head Ed. Okay then. Each Ed also has a formation which gets the other Eds involved. Ed's formation is the Bada Ed Ram, which is used for breaking things and also to travel quickly. Finally, Ed has 2 special abilities. He can carry certain objects over his head and can dig in sandboxes, which is how you get costume pieces to unlock the 2 bonus levels. Double D is next. His basic attack is a ruler, and he also has a weapon in the form of a slingshot, which can be fired with more precision by going into first person mode. This is helpful for dealing with enemies from a distance, but is also used for some puzzle solving. His formation is the Trampole Ed, which can be used to get Double D into high places that the other Eds can't reach. And finally, his special ability is to interact with switches, valves, keypads, pretty much anything that can be used to open a door. And last up is Eddy. We've already established his chain wallet attack, but he also has a weapon in the form of the El Mondo Stink Bomb. And his formation is the Tower of Eddy, which is used to walk across narrow platforms and hide behind telephone poles in one section. Now the game's trailer says that he uses the El Mondo Stink Bomb, which is a reference to an episode where Eddy makes a stink bomb the size of a garage, and that's what he calls it. But this obviously isn't the El Mondo Stink Bomb, they're way too small, and indeed the manual just calls them stink bombs. The first thing you'll notice when playing this game is just how well it captures the show. Every voice actor from the show reprises their roles, the music is literally just the same music composed for the show, and the environment looks like the hand-drawn backgrounds have come to life. The only off thing is just how weird the characters can look in 3D, but I don't think there was anything they could have done about that. They would look weird regardless. So overall, this game does a great job of transporting you to the world of the show, and it's great, for example, being able to explore the cul-de-sac and surrounding areas, which act as the game's hub world. Wait, this cul-de-sac, that reminds me, I was here before. When I was a kid, there was actually a time where I lived on a cul-de-sac. I remember when we were first looking at the house, I was really hoping we'd end up living there because it was on a cul-de-sac. It was just like Ed, Edd and Eddy, I thought. And well, yeah, we ended up living there for a little bit. Not very long, just long enough to have some memories of the time I lived my life like an episode of Ed, Edd and Eddy. And I mean that. It was one of the few times I actually socialized with the kids in my neighborhood. Being the shy kid I was, I didn't do that too often. I had also started riding a scooter around, to fit in with the other kids who were doing the same thing. For once I was being a bit active, not spending all my time inside, and had some friends outside of school. I have memories of riding scooters with the other kids, going around in circles right in the road of the cul-de-sac, just talking the whole time. I remember the ice cream van liked to drive down and park basically right in front of our house while blaring its music, and all the kids in the cul-de-sac, including myself, would leave our homes with our parents to get some ice cream. What was weird about this cul-de-sac was that you had to go down a massive hill to reach it. At least it felt massive as a kid, just a straight downhill road that flattens out completely just before you reach the cul-de-sac. Of course, this was great for our scooters. We'd slowly climb the hill and then about halfway up we'd turn around and get on our scooters and let gravity do the rest. You'd enter the cul-de-sac so fast that you need to do several circles around the cul-de-sac to lose enough speed before you could safely stop, and you'd be going around in circles so quick. This kind of became a game, I guess, to see how far up the hill you could start from, and once you hit top speed, that was it. There was no stopping yourself without bailing, so you had to make sure you could do those circles at the end. I'm pretty sure most of the other kids eventually managed to ride down from the very top of the hill. I'd watched from the top as they went down and I was always terrified they'd hurt themselves, but I don't think they ever did. Then it was my turn. They all egged me on. I still remember that view from the top, this long, seemingly vertical road that then flattens out into the cul-de-sac. I'd stare it down, wondering, worrying, should I do it? Could I do it? If I hurt myself, how bad would it be? I don't think we wore safety helmets or anything. That would have been smart. Maybe I would get seriously hurt. I never did it. Pretty sure the highest I went was from halfway up, and it wasn't long before we moved again. I didn't really go on my scooter anymore after that, and I also stopped socializing outside of school. Old habits die hard, I guess.
Hello, my name is Saberspark, and today we're going to be reviewing an animation from a YouTuber called Super Mo. And let me just say, this animation looks really bad. Like it looks like a 4-year-old drew it. Like an actual 4-year-old drew this. Like, I think I could make something a lot better in like 5 minutes. Like, just give me a napkin and like, you know, a marker, and I could make something that looked way better. Honestly, I don't know how he thinks this is presentable. That anyone wants to watch, you know, stick figures and really bad backgrounds and think that this is okay. Because it's not okay. It looks really bad. And, you know, he should feel bad. You know, he should probably, you know, give up. I don't think he's cut out for making YouTube videos. Or at least not animation. I mean, seriously. He should, you know, just like stop. Please, just stop. Stop it.
Every level has these title cards that look straight out of the show. I assume they got AKA Cartoon to make them. The game has 6 normal levels and 2 unlockable bonus levels, so it's pretty short. Looking back at my footage, it took me only 3 hours and 43 minutes to 100% the entire game. But I know for a fact when I was a dumb kid it took me a lot longer, and I think the short length isn't really a bad thing these days. It makes the game a pleasant little experience and never overstays its welcome. There's an animated cutscene at the start and end of each level, although I'm not sure if you can call the cutscenes animated exactly. To me it looks more like coloured in storyboard panels that have been stitched together. It still looks great though, despite the lack of movement. I have to assume AKA Cartoon made these segments as well, with just how on model all the characters look. Each level is its own self-contained story, like they're all different episodes of the show. Again, the title cards should have tipped you off there. The game gradually introduces you to the Ed's formation abilities, with the first 3 levels each introducing a new one, so the first 2 levels don't make use of all your abilities. Then there's the bonus levels. By digging in sandboxes around the game as Ed, you get costume pieces which will unlock 2 bonus levels. Both bonus levels are the only ones to play with the idea of not having all 3 Eds playable at once. One is a Godzilla parody with just Ed, where you have to destroy every building and then fight a disgusting monster at the end. This was my favourite level as a kid. Destroying all those buildings never got old for me. Of course, this level is taking place in Ed's imagination, and the second bonus level is also imagination based, where you're in the local junkyard, on an alien planet. At the start you don't have Ed with you, which means you don't have access to any of the formation abilities since they require all 3 Eds. But it's not long before you rescue Ed and it's business as usual. This level is very combat focused, way more than any other level, and this game doesn't have the best combat. The puzzle solving is obviously its main strength, so this level is a slog despite actually being quite short as the amount of enemies really slows you down. There's also a boss fight at the end of this one, which is interesting because there's only one boss fight in the normal levels, which is in the final level. So this game only has 3 boss fights and 2 of them are in the 2 bonus levels. There are also 40 Jawbreakers to collect. Some are hidden throughout the levels and others you have to buy with money from the Jawbreaker machine in the hub world. Money is of course collected as you play, from boxes and such. By collecting all 40 Jawbreakers you unlock a cheats menu, unlimited stealth, unlimited damage and fast run. Unlimited stealth of course works during the game's only stealth section in level 3, but it also means that no enemies will attack you, so that's really overpowered, a great little reward in my opinion. There are also 6 literal Easter eggs to collect, 1 in each normal level, that you get by catching chickens as Ed. For collecting them you get big head mode, small head mode, along with being able to wear the space costumes from that one bonus level. The last 3 Easter eggs all unlock movies you can watch from the hub world. You've got My Best Friend Plank, which is a full song and music video about Plank. I think this was made for a Cartoon Network bumper. Then you have this short video that just shows 3 pictures of the 3 main voice actors along with 1 voice clip each for their characters. I think they wanted to put that behind the scenes video they made here, but it was probably too long so they made it a bonus DVD instead. At least that's my theory, because this is really lame. And the last movie is that same trailer for the game that I watched over and over as a kid. Weird to have the last movie you unlock be a trailer that you might have already seen. It's also weird having all this obvious beta footage of the game be so clearly seen from within the game. I'm sure this was a lot of kids' first realization that games change a lot throughout development. So that's the game. It's a good, short little puzzle platformer with a ton of charm. If you're not a fan of Ed, Edd and Eddy then you probably won't get much out of this. But if you are a fan then I think this game is worth a playthrough. There are definitely worse ways to spend 3 to 4 hours. As a kid, this was exactly what I wanted from an Ed, Edd and Eddy game, and while it could have been a bit better, it also could have been way worse. I give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's time to have a flashback to something I said earlier. Released on October 31st, 2005 for PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, PC, and Game Boy Advance. Game Boy Advance. How did they manage to fit this game onto the GBA? Well, they didn't. They made an entirely different game and gave it the same title. This was a very common thing in this generation, to adapt console titles to handhelds and kinda half pretend that it was the exact same game. The GBA version was also developed by Artificial Mind and Movement, so let's see how they went with making a GBA version of their own game. Okay, so this game is literally just Ed, Edd, and Eddy Jawbreakers again, except this time every single conceivable thing is way better. Look, the other Eds follow you and you don't need to control each of them through the level one by one. What a genius idea, again! The controls are better, the graphics are better, the level design is better, the game is just better. You swap between the Eds to utilize the unique abilities to solve puzzles and get to the end. The puzzles aren't cryptic and gameplay mechanics are well explained and shown to the player. Though the trample Ed is weird here, as Ed and Eddy both jump up together with double D, which doesn't make any sense, but whatever. The game is literally just better in every way, making Ed and Eddy Jawbreakers completely obsolete, because if you want a 2D Ed, Edd and Eddy puzzle platformer for the GBA, then you just play this and not that other one that we can just now forget even exists. It's even more impressive when you realize Artificial Mind and Movement had to make the GBA version, plus all the different console versions all by themselves at the same time, and they still put out a way better GBA game than Climax Grip could manage. Now, I'm kinda making it sound like this is the greatest GBA game of all time, but it really isn't. It just looks that way compared to what came before. In reality, this is a good little game, but absolutely nothing special. For one, it's pretty short. I unexpectedly beat the game in just over an hour and a half, although the game lets you choose any level to replay after you beat it, so you can go back and get all the Jawbreakers, which I didn't do because I don't think you unlock anything for doing so. I didn't expect them to let you go back and collect what you missed. I think I would have liked this game as a kid. I can easily see myself beating this game over and over again, mostly out of love for the source material, but also because it's not a bad game, very playable, if pretty short on content. It's the best portable Ed, Edd and Eddy game, and I give it a 5.5 out of 10.
Here it is, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Scam of the Century, the DS game, developed by Artco Limited and published by D3, released in 2007. And as far as the game goes, you control the Eds and search for the Book of Scams after it gets stolen. And the gameplay? Well, the gameplay has some pretty unresponsive controls. The music and art style looks so good though for the time. Very faithful to the show. The game is okay, I guess, just not very good. The story in game is pretty short, only having 4 levels between all 3 of the boys, and overall the game is relatively short, and it isn't a fun time. Also, there are mini-games like Whack-A-Zit. Yeah, gotta tap those pimples. Also, a pie-flinging mini-game, which, yeah. But apparently the game is inspired or based off the Robin Ed and Big Picture Show episodes. And as the reception to this game goes, it was mixed to low. Yeah, in case you need to know that. So yeah, this was Mika Hotshot. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. Yeah. Okay. No, it's not a short. It's a segment. Like I just told you.
No, I'm trying to tell you I am of sound mind and I don't need an ambulance. I need the FBI, CIA, DNA. Someone has hijacked me. Oh, they're gone now. Okay, never mind. Cancel that order. Uh-huh. Yeah, uh-huh. Okay, love you too. Bye. Alright, on to the next Ed, Edd and Eddy game. Oh, that's it. That was the last one. I didn't even get to review it. I give it a 3 out of 10, by the way. I can't believe they posted the IGN review right on the front cover like that. Well, I guess I could talk about the Cartoon Network MMO Fusion 4, which featured an appearance from Ed, Edd and Eddy. What the hell am I looking at? Ed, Edd and Eddy, to me, represents childhood. Not just because it was one of my favourite shows as a kid, but also the content of the show itself, the way it effortlessly relates to kids without talking down to them, all while still being a wacky and funny cartoon. And in the same way that the show relates to kids, it also speaks to adults, but instead inviting you to revisit your childhood, to reconnect with that part of yourself. The cul-de-sac feels like this ethereal place removed from time, and that just maybe, if you allow yourself to get lost one day, you might find yourself back there. And, well, it's a cul-de-sac. Once you arrive, there's nowhere else to go. You either stay, or you go back the way you came. You can't stay in the past forever, and at some point, you need to turn around and live in the present. But you'll always take a piece of it with you. And if you dig deep enough, you might find that you're still the same child at heart. And I'm sure that child would appreciate if you reconnected every now and then. Maybe take the time one day to take a trip to the store and buy some Jawbreakers.
Wow, that was great. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
Until next time?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, will you be alright? By yourself?
By myself? Yeah, I'll be fine.
Alright, see you later.
See ya.
Terrain, 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 terrain.